Oof, my volume's loud there. Don't know what I was listening to. How's everybody doing? Let's check my own volume, make sure that's good, and it's good. So we are going to continue Nebuchadnezzar's story in Daniel, but first, heading toward the end times Olivet discourse um, in Matthew 24, but right now finishing up Matthew 23. We do not get into 24 today. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye compass sea and land to make one proselyte. So to become a proselyte Jew back then, that's where water baptism ended. Baptism by, and there were certain water baptism where they were still sort of keeping the rituals and circumcision and all that in Acts of the Apostles when they were transitioning. But of course, once Jesus ascended, the baptism, the true baptism, Jesus spoke about, you must be baptized of water and of blood, or you must be born again. A man must be born of water and blood. The water is your physical birth, when the lady's water breaks, and then your blood is your spiritual blood baptism, the death to self, the daily cross, baptism by the Holy Spirit, and fire. The fiery trials is the blood, the death to self. So, but to become a Jew, you could join the Jewish religion. In the Old Testament days, you had to be water baptized, completely washed. It was a ritual. And anybody doing it today, it's a meaningless ritual. We don't do rituals anymore. But you had to be water baptized, you had to have an animal sacrifice, and you had to get circumcised. That was to join the Jewish religion, to become what they call a proselyte Jew. The animal sacrifice was usually 2 turtle doves, or which were easier to come by, or an unblemished lamb. So, for ye compass sea and land to make one proselyte. So, you're doing everything you can to make people become Jews, or, you go through all these rituals to make somebody become a Jew. But when he is made, so when he becomes into your religion, or Jesus's religion also, that he is going to phase out, and when he is made, ye make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. So when somebody joins your synagogues, he's worse off than he was before he joined you. Woe unto you, ye blind guides. So that goes into the whole blind leading the blind, lest they both fall into the ditch, which is what happens when somebody walks into a free will believing church. It's the blind leading the blind. And oftentimes, it is a wolf in sheep's clothing leading the blind. But essentially, they're both blind, because the wolf in sheep's clothing thinks he's doing the right thing by his pagan religion. But he, of course, is blind to any truth also. Woe unto you, ye blind guides, which say, whosoever shall swear by the temple, is it nothing? But whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor. Ye fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifieth the gold? And whosoever shall swear by the altar is nothing, but whosoever swears by the gift that is upon it, he is guilty. I might get into New Living Translation today. My brain is just not really totally breaking all this down as I read it. It's kind of like when how we read the epistles. If you've been with me a long time, when we get into the epistles, we will get into the New Living with it. And and then run it through the King James. So blind God, blind fools, which is more important, the gold, the temple that makes the gold sacred, or the gold, or the temple that makes the gold sacred? Well, of course, it's the temple. And you say that to swear by the altar is not binding, but to swear by the gifts of the altar is binding. So he's saying you're going to swear by the truth. You're going to swear by something man-made or gold, something that's valuable monetarily, but not spiritually. How blind, which is more important, the gift on the altar or the altar that makes the gift sacred? Of course, the spirit. The spirit always over the flesh or fleshy things like gold. When you swear by the altar, you are swearing by it and everything on it. And when you swear by the temple, you are swearing by it and by God who lives in it. And when ye swear by heaven, you are swearing by the throne of God and by God who sits on the throne. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, you Pharisees, hypocrites. I think we can scoot back over here now to the King James. And he that shall swear by heaven sweareth by the throne of God and by him that sitteth thereon. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay the tithe of the mint and anise or anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye have done, and not leave the other undone. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens, but you ignore more important aspects of the law: justice, mercy, faith. You should tithe, yes. Remember, that's old covenant. But do not neglect the more important things. All right, very good. Daniel 4, Nebuchadnezzar's dream, which moves into Nebuchadnezzar's being humbled. And I think today Daniel's going to say, this dream is about you, O king. And the king ignores it, or months later, and then goes out and beats his chest. And the Lord humbles him right at that moment. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar to the pagan world, was astonished for 1 hour, and his thoughts troubled him. The king spake and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation thereof trouble you. Belteshazzar answered and said, my lord, or, O king, the dream be to them that hate you. In other words, this dream is for people that hate you, because you're about to be brought down. And the interpretation thereof to thine enemies. In other words, your enemies are going to love this. The tree that thou sawest, which grew and was strong, whose height reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to all the earth, whose leaves were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it meat for all. So, Babylon fed the earth, under which the beasts of the field dwelt, and whose branches and the fowls in the heavens were their habitation. It is thou, O king. It's you, O king. Thou art grown and become strong, for thy greatness is grown, and reacheth unto heaven, and thy dominion to the end of the earth. And whereas the king saw the watcher, so when you in your dream, you saw this angel and Holy One coming down from heaven and saying, hew down the tree and destroy it, yet leave the stump. Hopefully you watched yesterday's study. And the roots thereof, that means he's still going to be alive, even with a band of iron and brass in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field, till 7 times pass over him, 7 years. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my Lord the king. And he's about to tell him the interpretation, which we'll get to tomorrow. I'm glad you're here. I love you very much. Ask questions anytime. That's what I'm here for.